When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's honest, it's fun, and it's sure to.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. Are you as excited about this episode as I am? I sure hope so. We're about to dive into another story-filled adventure and learn something new. And remember, by learning more about the past, you can make a positive impact on the future. So pack your bags and let's go.
Take a moment to look outside your window. Do you see any birds? Maybe you spot a fat pigeon looking for a snack, or a black crow perched in a tree. If you're outside, it won't take long to find a feathered friend. And if you grab a pair of binoculars, I'm sure you'll see a few more. This, my friends, is called bird watching. Today, it's a common way to learn about the birds around us, but it wasn't always so. For a long time, scientists didn't pay attention to birds outside their windows. Instead, they studied live birds in cages, or dead birds they collected for their laboratories. But this all changed thanks to one incredible conservationist. Her name was Florence Merriam Bailey. She thought the best way to study birds wasn't in cages or laboratories, it was outside with a pair of binoculars. This is the story of Florence Merriam Bailey, the pioneering bird watcher. The year was 1874. It was a cold January day in Washington, D.C. An 11-year-old girl looked out the window longingly. "Can I go out to ride, Mama?" the girl asked eagerly.
"No, Florence," her mother said. "You might take a cold."
The young girl, Florence, sighed as she gazed out the window. She wanted to ride her horse dreadfully that day. Women, during that time, often stayed home and busied themselves with reading or needlework. But Florence didn't like being cooped up indoors. Like most children, she wanted to be outside, smelling the fresh air and listening to the birds chirp in the trees. Later that afternoon, her father walked into the room with a smile. "Would you like to go for a walk?" he asked Florence. "Yes, Papa," the girl replied excitedly. They left through the front door and began walking along the path. They could hear the clip-clop of a horse's hooves as it pulled a carriage along the road. Florence loved going on these walks with her father. Back when they lived in New York, he would take her around the grounds of their home. During their walks, he would point to the trees and the bushes, telling Florence and her brother about the animals that lived there. Florence often looked up into the sky. "A bird," she would say, pointing to a winged creature flying above her. Ever since she was a little girl, Florence had been fascinated by birds. "Would you like a bird?" her father asked. Florence nodded. During their walk in Washington, D.C., he set out to find his daughter a small songbird called a canary. He wasn't able to find a canary that day, but later that month, Florence was given a brass birdcage. She couldn't wait to write about it in her diary. "Oh my, I've got my canary and it's the dearest little thing that ever lived, I think," Florence wrote. She named the bird Bisou, which means jewel in French. Florence and her family lived in Washington, D.C. for another year while her father served as a U.S. congressman. In 1875, when his term was up, the family moved back to their house in upstate New York, a place Florence called Homewood. At Homewood, Florence was surrounded by nature. The house sat in the foothills of the tree-covered mountains. She fed birds through her dining room window and learned all about their different colors and songs. She followed her older brother Clinton as he explored the countryside. He was collecting specimens for his studies. Clinton, like Florence, was fascinated by nature. Florence came from a wealthy family and was given an opportunity for education. Because her family lived in the countryside, she was tutored at home rather than in a school. These lessons at home often involved nature and science. Florence became interested in many of the things her family members studied. Her mother, Caroline, loved astronomy and showed Florence how to use a telescope to look at the stars. Her aunt, Helen, was fascinated by plants and shared her love of flowers with her niece. Even Florence's father, who was a businessman, was interested in science. He became fascinated by glaciers and studied how the climate changed millions of years ago. Like her family, Florence cared greatly about her studies. In her diary, she often wrote about her lessons and the books she was reading. However, she often wrote about the time she was very sick and could not study. "My cold is not any better today, and I cough more than I did yesterday," Florence wrote, annoyed. She longed to be outside so she could play with her friends. Because Florence was often sick, she was sent away for a year to get medical treatment. During that year, Florence lived with a doctor's family and went to her first public school with other children. Florence continued to struggle with her health, but she kept going to school. She hoped that if she had studied hard, one day she could go to college. That day finally arrived in 1882. Florence was 19 years old when she began her studies at Smith College in Massachusetts. She was excited to meet her new classmates and start her courses. But as she looked around, something bothered her. She could not take her eyes away from her classmates' hats. You see, at that time, in the 1880s, it was very popular for ladies to wear hats, and many of these hats were decorated with bird feathers, or sometimes an entire stuffed bird. During a walk through the city, you could spot over 40 bird species pinned to the tops of ladies' hats. And some of these species were Florence's favorite birds, the ones she loved to watch flying through the open sky. "I cannot stand to look at these hats any longer. I must do something," she said. So one day, Florence and her good friend Fanny decided to set up a society at their school. This society would hold meetings and teach their classmates about birds. Florence wanted people to understand that millions of birds were killed to create these hats. She wrote newspaper articles on behalf of the live birds, asking women to stop wearing feathers. She and Fanny also organized outdoor hikes for the students. "I want my classmates to see how the birds look, what they have to say, how they spend their time, what sort of houses they build, and what are their family secrets," Florence said. Florence and her classmates would walk through the green fields of Northampton, Massachusetts, listening and looking for birds. Along the river, they'd hear the powerful quack of a mallard as it swam across the water. Near the woods, they'd hear the loud chirp of a song sparrow. Sometimes, if they were lucky, they'd hear the cry of a red-tailed hawk as it glided overhead. Florence would pull out a pair of opera glasses and lift them to her eyes. Typically, people used these small binoculars when they went to the theater to help them see the stage from far away. But Florence found another use for these binoculars. She used them to find the birds hiding in the trees. Over the next few months, Florence organized more meetings and hikes and published many more articles. She hoped it would protect the birds. And you know what? It worked. Soon, many of Florence's classmates sent their hats back to shops, asking hat makers to remove the feathers. And nearly 1/3 of her entire school signed up to join her bird society. Florence left college feeling like she had made an impact. And now she knew exactly what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to become an ornithologist and study birds.
Hi friends, are you enjoying today's episode? I'd like to take a quick break from the story to tell you about another great place to learn about the past. Honest History creates magazines and books for kids that are filled with fun stories and activities that bring history to life. From pirates to spies to great inventions and so much more, you'll learn about interesting people, places, and events from around the world that made history. Created for kids ages 6 through 12, you can sign up and receive new adventures delivered straight to your doorstep every quarter. Just visit honesthistory.co. That's honesthistory.co to sign up today. Oh, and here's a special offer for our podcast listeners. Use code ANYTIMENOW for 10% off. Again, that special code is ANYTIMENOW. Okay, let's get back to the story.
After college, Florence moved to New York City to live with her family, but life in the bustling city did not agree with her. Over the past few years, factories had sprouted up along the river, and thousands of people had moved there for work. As a result, contagious diseases spread quickly, and the air had grown thick with chimney smoke. Florence soon fell ill and continued to struggle with her health. The family called a doctor to come to the house. The doctor arrived and pulled a wooden stethoscope out from his bag. He placed it on Florence's chest to listen to her lungs. "Breathe in?" he asked her. He listened for a moment. "And out," he said. Florence let out a long, raspy breath. "I recommend the family leave the East Coast and travel somewhere with fresher air," he said. "Perhaps you should go west," he suggested. Florence and her family took the doctor's advice and packed their bags. They soon boarded a train heading to the West Coast. They were going to California. It was a long journey, around a week on the train, but it was well worth the trouble. Just as the doctor predicted, California's fresh air made Florence feel much better. As she explored the nature of Southern California, Florence was amazed by the new wildlife she discovered. There were birds she had never seen before. She quickly started to feel like her old self again. Later that year, she collected her writings and published them in a book. She called her book Birds Through an Opera Glass, and it was unlike any other. You see, up until then, books about birds were written for ornithologists who were bird experts. These books were full of words most people had never heard before, which made it very hard for them to understand. So, what about the everyday people who wanted to learn about birds? Who would teach them? "I will try to do it," Florence said. And so, she published a book that wasn't just for specialists. It was a book for everyone. Florence wrote about the birds she had seen in her binoculars during walks. She described their songs and sounds, their colors and sizes, and best of all, she encouraged everyone to go outside and explore the woods and fields near their homes. "You will not have to go far to find your first bird," she told readers. Her book was about something called bird watching. It may seem like a simple idea, and it was, but it was also revolutionary. Most ornithologists didn't study birds outside in the wild. They captured them in cages and brought them indoors. Or they collected dead birds to study inside laboratories and museums. Florence didn't agree with these methods. She believed the best way to study birds was to go outside and watch them live their lives. Florence was encouraged to continue writing by her brother, Clinton. By that time, Clinton was a well-known zoologist. A zoologist is someone who studies animals. All those years of wandering around the woods of their home had made Clinton fall in love with wildlife. He co-founded the National Geographic Society and introduced Florence to other people who studied nature. One of these people was a man named Vernon Bailey. Florence and Vernon bonded over their passion for wildlife and research. And in 1899, they married. When Vernon took trips for work, Florence joined him. During their adventures, Vernon studied the mammals they saw, while Florence watched the birds. One of these trips, they boarded a train for the western United States. Life in the West was very different from the one that she knew on the East Coast. Florence and Vernon traveled with one wagon and slept on the ground. At night, she could hear the gentle hoot of an owl and gaze up at the stars above her. Florence loved every minute of it. She would go on to publish many more books and articles about her adventures. When she returned to Washington, D.C., she started teaching birding lessons at the zoo. Her classes were small at first, but quickly grew to over 100 students. Florence's love for her feathered friends was contagious. So contagious, in fact, that it helped pass laws in the U.S. to protect wildlife. Throughout her life, Florence remained devoted to the study and protection of birds. When she passed away at the age of 85, she left behind an incredible legacy. Florence changed the way we study birds around us by watching them, and she shared this love for bird watching with the world. So, in the spirit of Florence Merriam Bailey, it's time to grab some binoculars and get outside. Remember, you don't have to go far to find your first bird.
Welcome back! What did you think of today's adventure? We hope you learned something new. Be sure to share the story with your friends and family, and use what you've learned today to go out there and make a positive impact on history yourself. That's all for now, but if you want to learn more about important and amazing stories from the past, be sure to subscribe to Honest History Magazine, where you'll discover stories from around the world. Thanks for listening. This episode was narrated by Randall Lawrence and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about Honest History, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media.